The Kenworth T600 frustrated drivers from the moment it entered widespread fleet service. The dramatically sloped hood changed aerodynamics, but destroyed the familiar sightlines drivers had relied on for years. Backing into tight dock positions became stressful compared to the square-nosed trucks drivers trusted. Owner-operators who switched from the classic W900 described it as losing a part of what made driving feel right. Some adjustments and training helped drivers adapt over time. The T600 was tolerated rather than appreciated by most who ran it. The Freightliner FLD 120 earned the nickname Freight Shaker almost immediately after entering service. The cabs rattled constantly, even when relatively new, and door seals failed quickly, leaving drivers freezing on winter runs. One driver described switching from a Peterbilt to an FLD as going from a warm house to a barn in January. Interior panels were cheap, wind noise was relentless, and rough roads amplified every vibration through the seat. Some build quality improvements were made in later production runs. The core reputation for being loud, drafty, and poorly finished followed the FLD throughout its entire life. The Mack RD series was built to haul punishment and largely ignored the person delivering it. Taller drivers practically folded themselves in half just to fit inside the cramped cab. Engine roar came directly through the firewall and floor on every shift, making long days physically exhausting. Although the RD earned respect for raw durability, driver comfort was treated as completely irrelevant. Narrow dimensions gave drivers almost no room to adjust their position during extended hauls. Veterans who ran it daily described arriving home worn down in ways other trucks simply did not produce. The Ford CL9000 looked impressive but disappointed drivers almost immediately in real service. The cab sat so high that climbing in and out became a workout on days with multiple stops. The Silver 92 Detroit diesel was called gutless regularly by drivers who pushed it on grades while fully loaded. Hills that other Class 8 trucks handled without complaint left the CL9000 struggling and slowing traffic. Attempts to improve performance through tuning had limited effect in practice. Drivers who ran it through the mountains remembered it mostly as a truck they had to fight rather than drive. The International 9200i was a workhorse that consistently frustrated operators with small but relentless problems. The cab was noticeably noisier than competing trucks of the same era. Electrical gremlins appeared constantly, with warning lights activating for no diagnosable reason and sensors throwing codes repeatedly. Drivers would return from trips, report problems, and get told nothing was found wrong at the dealer. Those same problems returned within 50 miles every single time. Mechanics and drivers alike described chasing the same unresolvable faults across the entire service life of these trucks. The Freightliner Century class replaced the FLD and inherited most of its problems while adding new ones. Interior panels did not fit correctly from the factory, and doors failed to seal against highway wind. Trim components rattled and broke within the first year of heavy service. The aerodynamic styling also made certain components far harder to access during repairs. Owner-operators found the Century class more frustrating to work on than the old FLD it replaced. Many drivers who had run both said they would take the rattly old FLD back without a second thought. The International Lone Star was built to impress at truck shows and failed as a working tool. The enormous long nose gave it retro styling but destroyed forward visibility on tight deliveries. Fuel economy was poor against every modern aerodynamic competitor on the road. Early max force engine options brought the same reliability catastrophe that plagued the ProStar directly into the Lone Star cab. Drivers who appreciated its appearance on day one began dreading it within the first month. Fleet managers who bought them for visual impression quickly learned that impression did not survive a real schedule. The Freightliner Columbia was positioned as an improvement over the Century class and arrived with the same disappointments. Door seals failed early, and wind noise was a constant companion on long hauls. The electrical system developed a reputation for instrument cluster failures and warning lights that activated without cause. Drivers spent hours at dealerships being told nothing was wrong before watching the same lights return immediately on the highway. For a truck priced above the Century class, it delivered Century class problems at a higher cost. Most drivers who ran both found the Columbia a lateral move at best. The Volvo VNL 730 offered genuine cab comfort that made its other problems more painful to accept. Drivers who sat in it knew exactly what a good truck felt like, which made the repair bills hit harder. The D13 engine in post-2007 emissions form failed at EGR coolers with alarming regularity. DPF systems required constant attention that added significant cost to every ownership calculation. Volvo parts were more expensive and harder to find quickly than any American brand. Owner-operators described budgeting carefully for reliability and discovering that comfort and reliability were entirely different things. The Kenworth T660 set out to compete with the Cascadia on fuel economy and aerodynamics and fell short on both. Real-world fuel numbers never matched the figures used in sales presentations. Drivers from the classic W900 or T600 felt it had traded away Kenworth character without delivering the efficiency gains that were supposed to justify the change. The truck felt like a compromise that satisfied neither camp. Kenworth discontinued it in 2016, and the reaction from the driver community was mostly silence. The first-generation Freightliner Cascadia promised aerodynamic efficiency and delivered engine problems underneath the smooth exterior. Early DD15 engines developed documented injector and EGR cooler failures that kept dealerships continuously busy. DPF regeneration forced parked burns that stranded drivers at completely unpredictable moments on loaded runs. DEF added complexity and cost that many owner-operators had not factored into their budgets. Drivers called it the Freight Shaker in a modern body, and the name stuck because the problems had not changed. Better looking than the Century class with the same fundamental issues underneath, the Mack Anthem was supposed to return Mack to contention for modern long-haul business. Drivers found the ride quality noticeably harsher than a Cascadia or Peterbilt 579 over extended mileage. The MD Drive automated transmission received repeated complaints about unpredictable shift logic that hunted for gears on grades at exactly the wrong moments. For a truck carrying Mack's premium price point, the gap between expectation and experience frustrated buyers consistently. Several drivers described it as a truck that promised more than it delivered at every level. Mack's reputation made the shortcomings feel even more disappointing than they would have from a lesser name. The International Transtar served regional operations and disappointed drivers on almost every measure that mattered for that work. It was less comfortable than the long-haul ProStar it was derived from, which itself was not a comfortable truck. fuel economy fell short of modern aerodynamic competitors on the same routes. After-treatment problems that plagued the entire international lineup appeared in the TranStar with equal consistency. Regional drivers covering 500 miles daily found that every small annoyance multiplied quickly across a full work week. It felt like a truck designed for no particular driver doing no particular job. The Freightliner Argosy was the last cab-over semi sold in North America, and drivers who ran it understood immediately why cab-overs had disappeared. Sitting directly over the front axle meant every road imperfection hit the driver with nothing absorbing the impact first. Accessing the engine required tilting the entire cab forward, unpleasant in good conditions and miserable in bad weather. Forward visibility was excellent and city maneuverability was genuinely impressive. But drivers who completed full shifts arrived exhausted and physically uncomfortable in ways that conventional trucks simply did not produce. The maneuverability advantage never fully compensated for what the driver absorbed all day long. The International Emeryville cabover is remembered as one of the most physically punishing trucks in American commercial transport history. Drivers sat directly over the front axle with no hood and no absorption between them and the road surface. The cab was cramped, deafeningly loud, and became a furnace in summer from engine heat rising through the floor. Winter routes sent cold air through every gap in the doors and floor panels simultaneously. Getting to the sleeper required crawling physically over the engine doghouse on every brake. One driver who ran an Emeryville in the early 1970s said simply, it was the truck that made him quit his first job. The International ProStar, with non-MaxxForce engines like the Cummins ISX, was a mixed experience that disappointed without catastrophizing. Ride quality was harsher than comparable trucks from Freightliner or Volvo on the same routes. The mirrors shook badly at highway speeds, making them unreliable for lane changes. Legroom was notoriously tight for taller drivers who spent full shifts unable to find a comfortable position. Wind noise at highway speed wore on drivers over long hauls. No single problem was catastrophic, but the accumulation of annoyances added up to a truck driver's tolerated rather than respected. The International ProStar with the MaxxForce 13 became one of the most universally despised trucks in modern American trucking history. The MaxxForce 13 used enhanced EGR alone to meet emissions standards without diesel exhaust fluid, and the system failed almost universally. EGR cooler failures were standard across the fleet rather than isolated incidents. Drivers reported coolant loss within weeks of taking delivery on brand new trucks. DPF systems clogged constantly and forced parks regenerations that stranded loaded trucks at random moments. Multiple class action lawsuits followed,